Hi and welcome. My name is Jessica Freck and I'm the Technical Content Manager here at Mozenda. And this is Answers to Mozenda Support's Top 3 Frequently Asked Questions. And real quick, I just want to introduce Ben Alexander. He's our Product Specialist Manager and he'll be running through this webinar with you today.
All right, awesome. Hi, I'm Ben. Thanks to everybody who took the time to jump in on our webinar today. We're going to be talking about some of the most common questions we hear people asking us about, or the solutions to a lot of the common questions people ask us about in our support department. So the 3 things we're going to touch on today, just the kind of basics of each of them, are how to modify XPaths and what they are, setting up lists, in particular data lists, and testing page lists. So all 3 of these are very useful tools to being successful in using Mozenda. So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. I'm going to go ahead and jump into my web console. We're going to create a new agent, and we're going to do that. There's 2 different ways to do it, right? You can click on the big M right here, or you can click on New Agent. So we're going to open up Mozenda. Okay, so we're actually going to start out by looking at this page. Some of you might see that this is a little bit familiar. This is actually the tutorial page we use when we have people build their first agent. So we're going to go into our agent builder. We're going to go straight to that page. And we're going to start an agent here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is XPaths, what they are, how to dissect them, how to write our own XPaths. And the reason we bring this up is because in our experience, we've seen that customers who are really successful at using Mozenda are successful largely based on the fact that they've taken the time to learn how to use XPath. So we're going to start out just by I'm actually going to show you how to get to the XPaths window. It's open right there. There's 2 ways to actually open it up. You can come in here and go to File, Settings, click the XPath box right here. An easier way to do it that I'll typically use, you can just right-click one of these blue bars down here, click XPaths, and it'll open it. There's actually a lot of useful windows that are open in this little box right here. For example, our navigation request window, which is a lot of people have been asking questions about lately. We've got a lot of cool new features that let us improve efficiency of agents by blocking certain requests. So if you haven't heard about this window, reach out to us and we'll take some time to teach you about it. Today we're going to be focusing mostly just on XPaths for now though. So we're going to start out by jumping in and creating a capture list on these products, these cameras on this page. So we start out, just like you guys all probably know, by clicking capture list, and then we click another product that is similar to it, like right here, and we're going to give it a title. We're going to call it product. Perfect. So when we create that, we see that it's auto-generated a couple of XPaths for us right here. And you can see that it's kind of highlighted over the items that we're trying to find right there. And the way that it's finding that is by using XPath. And I know that for a lot of you, this probably looks a little bit like a jumbled mess right now. We're going to dissect a little bit and get familiar with it. But the important thing to know is that what actually makes up this page is what's called an HTML document. And it's actually that HTML document that we parse with XPath in order to capture the products that we want. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and we're actually going to show you that by jumping into Google Chrome. So here's the same web page, and we are going to pop open our dev tools. If you don't know how to get those open, you just press F12 on your computer, just like that, and it pops open a series of tools that are really useful when you're building out agents. So like I said, this is our HTML document. And you can see as I hover over things over here, it highlights stuff on this side of the page. Because everything in this page, everything that you see is connected to something in the HTML document. So the key to web scraping and the key to extracting it using the Mozenda tool is by pulling it from this HTML, from the document right here. So a quick intro to kind of the layout for how HTML works, because it's really important to understand what HTML is in order to be able to use XPath. So just a quick intro, we can see that there's a lot of stuff going on this document. I'm going to show you a slide that we have right here that shows, so whenever you see an open caret like this, followed by a closed caret at the end with some stuff in between. That's going to be an element. So when we look over here, here's an element. It starts right here, goes to the end, right? And each of those elements may or may not have a series of one or more attributes with a value associated to them. So to kind of understand that, we're going to come back and we're going to take a look at this, right? So we can see that right here we have an element whose tag is called a div. It's a div tag. So if we look back, right, that first thing you see is going to be the tag. So it's a div tag, and this div has an attribute called class. And the class has a value of left nav. So these are just basically ways for us to identify things on the page, and then developers who are creating the websites use these types of attributes to give it different values. But for our purposes today, all we need to understand is kind of the layout of how an HTML element looks. One way that you can try to find where this element is in the HTML, because right, we're capturing these product titles, just go ahead and right click on an element, and you can go ahead and click, then left click inspect, and that'll take you straight to it in the document. So we can see that this is, might look a little bit confusing to a lot of you, but we can see that this is basically what's tied to the product title right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back over here into the agent builder, and we're saying that essentially these XPaths, and there's actually two of them. The top one's a more relative XPath, and this one's an absolute XPath, meaning that this one starts at the top of the HTML document and traverses through to try to find what we want, whereas this one tries to do it a little bit further scoped in to reduce dependencies on other elements in the document. So we're going to take actually this bottom one right here, and we're going to jump over to the HTML document, and if you press Control F, pop open a little window that says you can find by string, selector, or XPath. And we're going to say find by XPath and put that in, and you can see that it's finding 5 items, the same 5 items that the agent builder was finding using that same XPath. So let's go ahead and look at that first item. If we hover over it, we see that it's finding that first product, and we can see that essentially what it's doing is it's following a path to try to get to this A tag. So you're starting to see a little bit of how the syntax of XPath works. It starts out by finding an HTML tag, which is right here, and then it goes one level nested in. And a short anecdote, one easy way to kind of see how an HTML document is structured is to kind of think of it as like a family tree, where an element at the top can be considered a parent node, and anything nested within it, so all these nodes, can be considered children nodes. So when you're writing an XPath, this slash indicates that you're looking at child nodes. If you have 2 slashes, it's looking at any descendants. So if you're this node right here and you have a double slash, it can look at anything that's nested in it. If you have a single slash, like our XPath had, it only looks at the children just below it. So we can see that it's kind of mapping out, traversing through until it finally finds this A tag at the bottom. And as we can see, it's working great right now. We shouldn't really think, kind of by your own intuition, you wouldn't really think it would be important to change it if it's working. But the problem is that working with a tool that scrapes the web is that the web is changing every day, especially on the most popular websites. And so a lot of times the auto-generated XPath that Mozenda provides, that'll get you the right data right then. Down the road, if the website changes, for example, if one of these div elements or one of these div or body elements moves, then the XPath might break and you won't be getting the data you need. So we're going to talk real quick about how we can just kind of the real basics of writing an XPath that'll be a little bit cleaner, scoped in further, and less fragile. So what we're going to do, and step one whenever you're creating an XPath, is to try to look for commonalities among the things you're trying to find. So we know we want to find all these product names right here. So let's go ahead and inspect this one. So it's an A tag, right? It's hard to see when I got that over, but it's an A tag, and it's got a couple attributes. It's got href equals camo1.html, alt equals wildview, that looks like the product title. It's got a title attribute, and right here at the bottom we see that it's got a class attribute, and the value is prod title underscore sm. So just remember that, because now we're going to go look at the next item, and we see that this A tag also has an href, but it's different. This one had camo1 and this one has camo2, and then these other attributes are a little bit different, but now we're seeing that the class take a look at the classes. The class here has the same value as the class attribute here. So now we're starting to see, hey, there's some commonalities here. Everything we want is an A tag, and it's got a class attribute with a value of prod title underscore SM. And it kind of makes sense, right? Prod title, product title. Right? A lot of developers try to make it make sense so that it's not just random words in here. So we're going to actually build our own XPath now. And we're going to do it by kind of trying to piece together those commonalities we found. So we jump back over to our slide, right? This is the basic syntax for one of the most used types of XPaths we use, which is searching for a tag. For example, we had the A tag in the element we were looking by using attribute values. So if we come back over here, we're going to start by doing the double slash, means search the whole document. And we know we want to look for an A tag, so let's start there. We can see that that's finding 33 items, which is a lot more than what we want, right? There should only be 5. If we start clicking through, we see that it's finding every single thing that you can click, basically. And so we're stuck with a lot more items than we actually want. So right off the bat, we know, okay, we're on the right track, but we need to scope in a little bit further. So we're going to use the rest of this, which is within square brackets. You put the @ sign, and then you write the attribute name equals, and then the value for that attribute. So if we come back over here, we're going to put our square brackets, we're going to put our @ sign, and we're going to take a look at our attribute. If we remember, we saw that it was this class attribute that is common between each of these titles. So we're going to say @class, right, the name of the attribute, and then we're going to place the value of the attribute, which is prod title underscore SM. And there we go, just like that. We've got our XPath that's finding the 5 items that we want. And let's go put this in the agent builder, make sure it works there as well. There we go, it's still finding all our 5 items. And so let's take just a quick minute and try to compare this one with these ones. I'm sure right off the bat you're thinking that, yeah, this one obviously looks a lot cleaner. And it's more than just looking clean. It helps a lot with the structure of the agent and helping it so that it won't break down the road, right? Both of these two are dependent on all of these other things, even though all we want is this A tag. Whereas this XPath that we've used only relies on an attribute value. And attribute values are much less likely to change on a page over time than the layout will. The layouts are always changing, they're updating it, making their sites look different, putting ads in. But an A tag with a class attribute, you're going to be feeling pretty confident that that agent's going to work for a long time. So we're going to go ahead and delete these other ones and just keep our clean custom XPath that we wrote together. And yeah, that's kind of the intro to how you would build an XPath on your own. Like I was saying before, we always like to train our customers on using XPath and learning how to use it, because we found that the people who are successful take the time to learn it. And so, like I said, this is kind of an intro today, but we've got a lot of training resources on XPath, how to use it, how to learn it, what it is. Look through our website. It'll probably also be linked to the blog when we post this webinar. So just take a look at those when you have some time to learn a little bit more. So, and then if you have any questions, make sure to just send those through to the chat. We're going to be answering those at the end of the webinar. But with that, we're going to go ahead and move on and learn about another feature called data lists. And before we do that, we're actually going to modify this agent just a tiny bit. Let's say instead of capturing these product titles, we actually want the links behind them. You can do that just by opening up. You right click on the capture action and you go to refine captured text. And right now it's capturing the text there, but we want to try to find the link. So we're going to say find the HTML. And then if you're looking in the HTML that's there, you're going to highlight the link that you actually want. And it'll build a little custom delimiters here that'll mark it up so that it'll show you what you're going to be getting. So if we save that, now we look at our capture text preview. Oops. Sorry about that. Look at our capture text preview. Now we're seeing that it's finding all the links. So for consistency, let's go name this product link and save that. And we're going to save this to our account. Oops. We're going to call this one cameras 1, because now we're going to go create another agent called cameras 2 that's going to use these links to kind of refine a process that'll make scraping this website a lot faster. So we'll close that, jump back over to our web console, if we refresh here, now we see that we've got our first agent, and we're going to run it right away so that it can get some data for us to use. And you can run it just by going agents, all agents, clicking on the one you want, and clicking ready and then run. So while that one's running, let's go ahead and open up a new agent. Go to File, New. And we're going to click Start a New Agent from this page. And so when we're building a data list, the way you do that is you come up here to this Add Action button up here. You're going to left click on that. Come down here and click on the Input List action. And it's going to give you three options. There's an option to do a manual entry, which you essentially just put in the values yourself. There's an option to import a file from your computer. Both of those can be useful in certain scenarios, but today we're going to be talking about this one, which is importing it from another collection in your account. So we're going to choose that option. It's going to bring up a list of all your collections and 8 agents associated to them. So we're going to bring in the data from the Cameras 1 agent. So we're going to click OK. And there we go. We've got a data list. If you right click on it and go to Properties, you're going to see the data that's pulled from there. If we jump back over to the web console, we can see that these are the results that this agent ended up capturing. It already finished. It cut all these links for us. So now from here, we have the option to do whatever we want with these links now. So one of the most common use cases for using a data list is to take those URLs and load each one up individually, so that we can we'll mention it a little bit down the road, but it's going to be a way that we can split up an agent to work a lot faster. So if we start right here in our Add Action button, and we go to the Load New Page action, we're going to be passing in a parameter from this begin data list. And the way you pass in a parameter is using our syntax. You do a %, and then you put the name of the field that you want to pass in here. And if you remember, we called it product link. And I'll show you that again in a second. And you click, and then you end it with another %, and then you click Add Page. So you see how it loaded up one of the links that was from our original agent. And the reason that is when we have these data lists, you can either double click this data list or right click and click Properties. It'll open this little window open. So basically for each item in this list from Cameras 1, the first agent we built, it's going to loop through and load each of the product links. And that takes us to this page where we can now come in, we can click right here to capture text. We'll call this product title. I'm just doing left clicks here. Click right there on the price, save. So now when we test this agent, right here in this test agent button, then you click start. It'll run through, load each link up individually, capture the product titles that we want, and the prices. So let's let that run through really quick, make sure it's working smoothly. There we go. Looks like it's working okay. We'll let it get all 5. In this particular use case, you might be wondering, why would we do this in this scenario? Because, it's a pretty small website. We're just getting a couple cameras. It wouldn't take very long to just click into each one. But I'm going to show you in just a minute how if we were to scale this to say 1,000 products or even just 100 products, the ability to use a data list is going to be really handy. So if you come back into the Properties data list, I'm just going to show you a couple more features about it. So if you notice in our output, we've got our product title and price. But what if we want to bring through our product link as well from the agent 1? Right now, as it is, it's not bringing that through. If you do want to bring fields through from a data list, you can go to Additional Settings, and then you can click this Select button right here. And this will let you pick which fields you want to bring through to the output collection over here. So we don't really care about item ID in this scenario, but we do want the product link to come through. So if we click OK right there and save it, and then test the agent again, now we can see that our output is going to include the product link as well. So a lot of people sometimes will get worried that when they use a data list that they're going to be missing out on the data that the first agent collected, but you can easily just carry it through just like we did right now. So the other thing I'm going to show you, and this is kind of what we're leading up to, let's go back to the properties, at least for data lists. If you go back to additional settings, so let's say as a user you only want to see the first 2 indexes from this original list, right? So we can come in here and we can say, okay, let's only look for this range, 1 to 2. And when you refresh, it'll actually only load these 2. You can also say, what if you just want 3? And refresh that, and it'll only give you the 3rd item. You can also say 4 onward, and it'll give you everything past index 4. So when we save that and test it now, we'll see that it's only going to load the last 2 links and get that information. So just like that, we've kind of covered the basics of what a data list is and what it can do. But right now I'm going to show you the huge benefit of using a data list. Because right now you might be thinking, well, we want all 5 objects anyway, right? So this isn't really beneficial. But if we pass in a parameter here as well, we're just going to call it index. So you'll remember, right, that down here, product link is a parameter and it's waiting for this field. It's waiting for another field called product link to come so it can use it as a parameter. So when we put a parameter right here in our agent, it means that this parameter is also expecting a field called index so that it can use it here. So if we jump back into our web console, actually let's save this agent really quick as cameras 2. What we're going to do is run the agent. We're going to split it into 3 different jobs so it's running 3 times as fast and index it using that index parameter that I showed you. So let me come back here to our web console. You're going to want to go back to your agents table. Click on cameras 2 now. When that gets open. So I know a lot of you are familiar with running an agent right here. You're ready to run it, you build an agent, you want the data, you come in and you click run. But what I'm going to show you is you can actually come over here, click that data button, and go to our jobs table. From the jobs table, there's an option that says new job. And the benefit of doing this is when we click on it, it gives us an option to pass in parameters. So remember in the agent builder, we have this data list waiting for a parameter called index. So if we right here come and say, okay, the parameter name is called index and the value that we're passing in is 1 to 2. We add that parameter, we create the job, and now we've got a job that's only looking for indexes 1 to 2, just like that. And so right away we can come and create another one and we can say index, and this one's only going to do 3 to 4. We can create that job. And we'll say yes to add it in there. And let's do one more to get that last 5th index. And just like that, we now have 3 jobs working for this agent to get all the data rather than just one. So you can see how this can be a lot faster when you have, like I said, when we scale it up to 1,000 items or so. Imagine having an agent that clicks into one item individually for 1,000 items, as opposed to an agent that has 5 jobs running to get all 1,000 of those, right? So that's going to be 5 times faster if you use the data list to split it up that way. So this is a really useful feature that can actually be enhanced by using what's called our sequencer. This is kind of the old-fashioned way to do it. Since the sequencer has rolled out, we've got a couple ways that basically automate this process for you. We're focusing mostly today on data lists, so I won't dig too deep into the sequencer. But essentially, if this looks like a method that's going to help you improve your processes, don't waste a minute. Call into our support or send in a chat to our chat on this webinar, because the sequencer is going to be able to help you to automate this process really well. So with that, we're about ready to move on to our last topic, which is page lists. So once again, like I said, send in any questions you have. We'll be happy to answer as many as we can. We're going to go up and we're going to open up our Cameras 1 agent. A lot of people know this, but there's a lot of people come in to the agent builder and say file, open, and you can do it that way. It's totally fine, but sometimes it's a little bit faster if you just go to the web consoles and the agent, and you can click right here and click design. and then it'll open it up right for you in the web console. Or I'm sorry, in the agent builder. All right, so I'm sure a lot of you noticed when we were building this first agent that we only got one page, right? That's not going to do us much good when there's 6 pages of cameras on this website. So what we're going to do is just do a real quick overview of what a page list is. I know a lot of you have probably used page lists, but it's actually one of the things that most commonly comes up with having issues. So I'm just going to give a brief walkthrough of how you can set up a page list, talk about a couple of the different things that might go wrong. So when you reach a list like this that has different pages of information, there's typically going to be something like a next button there. So to build a page list, you're going to start by just left-clicking that button right there. And instead of putting like a click item or a capture text item or capture list, we're going to say page list. I'm going to click on page list. And this is just a window that just confirms that what it's finding is accurate. It's saying it's finding something in the HTML that says pagination right.gif. To me, that sounds like it's an image of something that's pointing to the right, which is, exactly what we have here. So we can feel pretty confident this will probably build it correctly. So we'll say create page list. And page lists, if you'll notice, also have XPaths right here. This is one that uses a little bit more advanced XPath than we were working with before. It uses the contains method, normalized space. These aren't things that should scare you. They are a little tough at first, but when you take some time, like I said earlier, to review XPath, it ends up being a lot more enjoyable. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just kind of trust this XPath for now, since we've already gone through XPath training today. But basically what's going to happen is it's going to click this next button each time after it circles through and captures these product links. So let's just test this agent out, just so you can get a feel for how it's working. And then I'm going to show you another method after that. So see how it captures 5 items, it clicks the next button, goes to the next page, and it's capturing, it should get 30, right? Yeah, so it's getting all 30 products. Once it gets here, it sees that there's no next button anymore, so the agent stops. Just like that, you've gotten all these items, and this is where Mozenda really comes into play with a lot of use cases. Is it's pretty easy to get the information off one page, but when you have many pages, it's hard to do it without setting up an agent to do it for you. So just like that, we've got our page list set up. One thing I'm going to show you as well is that some websites don't have a next button. Most do. Most have some form of a next button to click on, but every once in a while you're going to hit a site that just has page numbers without a next button. And we can, don't be afraid when that happens, we still have an option. I'm going to show you that right here. I'm actually going to delete our page list that we have right now. I'm going to test the agent really quick just to put us back on page 1. So let's pretend, just for practice here, let's pretend this next button wasn't there, but you have all these page numbers here. So if you want to create a page list based on these numbers, all you would do is you'd come click on the next page, which in our case we're on page 1. So we're going to click page 2 right here, just like that. And we're going to say page list. And it'll usually pop up with a window that says that you clicked a page number link. Is there a next button or something similar instead? And usually if there is one, you're always going to want to go with the next button instead. But in our case, since we're pretending it's not there, we're going to say no. And so now it says that our page list action, instead of clicking the next button, we'll click a sequence of page numbers one at a time. So if we look at the XPath now, see how it's looking for the number 2. It's going to click this number 2 here. And as it advances through the agent, when it's on page 2, it's actually going to be looking for page 3 down here in our XPath. So it ends up giving us the same results on this particular site as if we were using the next button. But like I said, every once in a while you're going to hit a couple of different websites that don't have a next button. And so it's really beneficial to know about this other method of setting it up for on the page numbers in case you do hit that scenario. So I think that's about it. There's some other websites that try to get really creative with the way they load it up. They'll either have you have to scroll down to load more products, or scroll down and click a load more button or something similar to that. And there's different techniques to set up page lists to make that work. But what we've covered today will probably help cover about 90% of sites you're going to see. For that additional 10%, you're going to want to look forward to a little bit of time calling our support department or reaching out to your customer success manager to kind of teach you how to set it up in those more rare scenarios. But I think with that, we're about done with our page list, which means we're kind of finishing up on the stuff that I had prepared to share with you guys. So I'm going to take a minute, and if you have any questions, send them in right now. I'm going to check in with Jessica really quick to see if there's some questions we can start answering. So thanks. Okay, so we've got a couple questions right here. I'm going to try to answer as most as I can. So one of the questions that got sent in is, why create 2 agents when you could just program the first agent to go to each link? That's an awesome question. On this particular site, because it's got so few products, it might just be easier to, rather than capture the product link, you just create a click item right here that will just take you to the page itself, and it'll do it for each one individually. The benefit of creating 2 agents is so that when you're dealing with large scale, like I said before, over like 1,000 products, clicking into each one of those with one job is going to take 1,000 items worth of time. But if you split that into 2 jobs, like we showed you using the data list and splitting it by indexing it, depending on how many jobs you split it into, you can speed up the agent quite a bit. But that's an awesome question. It's probably the #1 use case for using this type of scenario is to speed up agents that are trying to collect a lot of data. So let me check and see if we've got another question we can put on. We've got another question. I'm going to try to answer it kind of the best I can. It says, sometimes there's HTML on a subsequent page that is not apparent on the first page. How do you capture that? So that's an awesome question, and that's one of the huge benefits to being able to learn how to use Xpath, because a lot of times Mozenda might think it's generating an Xpath that's going to be valid, but it might only be valid for that one page, whereas on another product page, it's kind of located in a different spot. So the #1 answer to your question, I'm sure there's a lot of different ways that we can go about trying to help you with that. But the #1 way is to try to dissect the HTML, and like we were mentioning before, we'll look for commonalities between the elements that you are trying to find, and use those to build your own custom XPath to work with. In some scenarios, you're going to reach a page where, like, let's say this product did have a price and the next one didn't. In which case you can come over, so like let's say we're capturing price right here. Capture text, price. If there really isn't a price on some of these pages, no matter how you work your XPath, it's just not there, you can come right click on the capture action and click this optional field. And basically what's that saying is that if it's not there, don't worry about it, just skip over it. But if it is there, this is kind of a last resort. You don't always want to put very many optional fields in your agent, because what if it is there and you're just missing it, right? So the best option is to try to look and build an XPath that will find it if it is there. And then if you know that some products won't have it, then it's okay to come in here and make it an optional field. That's another great question. All right, so I think well, actually, here's another question. Yeah, let's dig into this one really quick. So I won't dig too much into this one because it's kind of jumping onto another topic, but this one says, can you show us an example of how to use the sequences tool to split up data lists? So like I said, it's kind of another topic altogether, but it's definitely worth taking a little bit of time. So if you remember, if we go back to our cameras 2 agent, and we're going to go to, we're going to go to our jobs table. If you remember, we had to do all this manually. We had to write an index, we had to write in the different values for it. It's kind of a pain, and it can often not be convenient to do this, even though it does save time. So if you use the sequencer, you can click into that option right up here. And I'm just going to walk you through building a real simple sequence that would do what we want. So if we come here, we can click New Sequence, and we're just going to call this one Cameras. Perfect. So this is the home screen when you first create a sequence. And to define sequence right, it's a sequence of steps that are executed either one following the other or in conjunction, depending on the way you set it up. For a real depth explanation of sequences, take some time to reach out to our support department or customer success manager. They can go in real depth and talk about all the steps. But today we're just going to show you how to split up a data list using it. So if you come here, you can click this add step feature. There's a couple different types of steps. Like I said, we're just going to look at this run agent step. So we click into here, and it gives us a window that lets us pick which agent we want to run. So let's start with cameras 1. Let's bring that in here. And we know that this one, just click save there. So we're going to let this one run, and then when it finishes, each time we run this sequence, we want this agent to run first because it captures all the links. And then the second one, we're going to create another run agent step that runs cameras 2. And this is where it gets really, really exciting. So remember how before we had to go in and set parameters in order to split up the data list? In this scenario, all we need to do is click this button right here that says divide the cameras 1 default data list into, and we'll say 3 concurrent jobs. So now when we save that, now what's going to happen when we run this, and we can run it really quick and take a look at it when it finishes, it's going to run this first agent, it's going to capture all the URLs for us, and then when that one finishes, it's going to run to the second agent, and it's going to split it into 3 jobs, which means it's going to run 3 times as fast, and it's going to capture all the rest of the information for us. So this is a super useful tool. I really do use it probably on almost every single one of the processes that I have set up agents for. It's fast, it's efficient, and it's just a lot more reliable than having to go in and index it out yourself, because we can make mistakes, right? But the sequencer will get it automated and working correctly each time. So that was an awesome question. I'm glad you brought that up. If you have more interest, if you think this is a process that would help, reach out to us and we can help you try to learn how to set it up on some of the processes that you already have set up. But that was an awesome question. Thanks. And I think we're probably about close to running out of time. I'll take one more question. Yeah, that's a good one. It says, I often hit issues where the page list tries to keep clicking the next button even when it's on the last page. How do I stop this? Okay, this is an awesome question. I get one about this pretty frequently as well. So I don't actually have a website in mind that has this type of issue, but we can show it on this website. So what the question's asking, at least what I'm pretty sure it's asking, is every once in a while you'll find a website that has a next button, and you'll click it and you'll click it and you'll get to the last page, and when you get to the last page, the button's still there, which is bad, right? Because you can't actually advance past page 6 because there's only 6 pages. And so what happens is, if it is still there, the Xpath we wrote, which if we come back over here, yeah, we can, we'll do that later. If we come back over here, we see the, let's right click it actually, sorry. If we right click that and click inspect, pops it open over here, and we can see that this is the Xpath for this button here. So the problem that stems from what I believe this user emailed in or chatted in about is when you get to the last page, the Xpath that is used to find this element can still find something even though it's on the last page. On this website, it's not there. Obviously, we don't see it, but it happens a lot of times where the button is still there. And the one tip I'll give to you, it might be one of those questions that might be better answered individually to show you the actual site that you might be having troubles with. But a lot of times if you go look at the element, you're going to see that if it's on the page that really should have a next button, it'll be a normal Xpath. But if it's on a page that maybe doesn't quite have, or that isn't supposed to be able to advance to a new page, it'll have something like this. Another attribute. It's not always going to be like this, but it'll say something along the lines of disabled. So essentially, a lot of times you're going to find an Xpath that works, and it finds it even when it's marked as disabled because your Xpath doesn't care if it's disabled or not. And the problem with that is if you're on the last page and it still finds it, it's thinking that it's clicking, and it's just going to keep getting duplicate results on the last page over and over again until you realize what's going on. I'll show you a quick solution to it. It'll probably take a little more of a dig in to really get familiar with how to do it in each scenario. But let's build a quick XPath on this image tag. So we see that it's got a page right title. So I'm going to build an XPath off this IMG tag and say it's an at title equals, and it's, as we can see right here, the attribute value is page. Actually, we're going to want page right. So I'm going to say page right. So see how this finds two items. It's going to find this one at the top and this one at the bottom. If we click through, you'll see that it highlights both of those. But one of them we added in this disabled field, which is what's going to happen when you run into this scenario that this user emailed in about or chatted in about. And what you can do is just modify this XPath just slightly, and we're going to say and, so we want it to have a title attribute of value page right, and we want it to not have a class attribute that equals disabled. So just like that, now we're seeing that it finds the bottom one because it doesn't have a disabled class, but the top one isn't found anymore. Hopefully that makes sense. It can get a little confusing, especially if XPath's kind of new to a lot of you. But essentially, that's probably the issue for the particular user who sent in that question, that's probably the issue that you're seeing, is that it's actually disabled even though it still shows up on the page. So I'm hoping that answered your question. In short, it'll take a little bit of more XPath modification to get it to recognize that it shouldn't be advancing at that point. But yeah, that's another great question. We see people with that issue a lot, and if you're still having trouble with it, just call us and we'll walk you through how to get it resolved on that particular website. But yeah, I think that's probably the last question we're going to take. Actually, let me see if we can get one more in. Okay, yeah, I'll just answer probably one more question, one or two more. So this question right here, it says, why don't I see sequencers in my web console? That's a great question. Sequencer is actually exclusive to our enterprise clients. So if it's something that could be really useful for your process, reach out to our sales department and see what the cost would be to upgrade to an enterprise license. But yeah, that's a good question. I should have mentioned that. I'm sorry. There's another question that says, can you make the sequence steps conditional? If then else. That's kind of a little bit of a gray area. Mozenda on its own doesn't have built-in if else then type of logic, but you can do quite a bit with the sequencer. I don't want to dig too deep into this question right now because we can go on a whole nother hour talking about the sequencer, and it might best be suited if you were to reach out to our support department. But as of right now, there's not a specific if then else type of way to set up a sequence. But there's different ways that you can kind of work with it to make it do that type of process. Like I said, it's a little bit confusing, so it's probably best to reach out and talk directly to somebody in our support team. But it's a great question. So yeah, I think with that, we're probably going to finish up. If I didn't get to answer your question and you really want to get that answered, reach out to our support department. Like I said, they're available 6 a.m., 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And we're always happy. We love talking to people who we haven't had an opportunity to talk with yet, teach them about the tool. Even if you're a new user or a user or somebody who hasn't even downloaded the tool yet, just wants to get familiar with it, give us a call. We're friendly. We like talking with you and teaching you how to use Mozenda. But I appreciate everyone who took the time to participate in the webinar today. And yeah, I hope you have a good day. I'll pass the time back over to Jessica.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I would love your feedback on how this webinar went. If there's any topics that you'd like to see us do in the future. I know I saw a comment saying that they would like to see a little bit more basic version because they haven't used Mozenda before, so they'd like a webinar that is introducing them to onboarding to Mozenda, things like that. I would love that feedback. You can send it to webinar@mozenda.com, and that way we can best help you use this product and help you really learn how to use it specifically for your data harvesting needs. But yeah, please email us at webinar@mozenda.com, and I hope this was helpful.